The stars belonged to the Zephyrian Empire. This was a fact that had not changed for 3,000 years. From the golden spires of their homeworld to the farthest mining colonies, every thinking being in 12 star systems knew this truth. The Empire had conquered worlds that breathed poison gas, civilizations that lived in molten rock, and species that existed as pure energy. No one had ever successfully fought back. Admiral Vexitar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Glory, watching the swirling colors of hyperspace through the massive viewport. His scales shimmered with the deep blue that marked his high rank, and his 4 eyes tracked the holographic displays that showed his fleet's formation. 200 ships, more than enough to crush another primitive world. Admiral, his tactical officer reported, "We will arrive at the target system in 6 hours. Vexitar's mandibles clicked in what humans might have recognized as satisfaction. The target was a small blue world orbiting a yellow star. The local species called it Earth. His scouts had been watching them for 50 cycles, and their reports were always the same. The creatures were bipedal mammals who had only recently learned to leave their homeworld. They had crude chemical rockets, basic fusion power, and weapons that still used explosive projectiles. "What is their military strength?" Vexitar asked, though he already knew the answer. "Minimal, Admiral. They have no energy shields, no plasma weapons, and no faster-than-light military vessels. Their largest warship masses only 50,000 tons. They call it a carrier, though it appears to transport small atmospheric fighters." Another officer added, "They do have one vessel of unknown configuration hiding behind their moon. Our sensors detect it massing approximately 100,000 tons, but it appears to be powered down." Vexitar's inner eyelids flicked dismissively. 100,000 tons was barely larger than an Empire patrol boat. Probably a generation ship or research vessel. Mark it for capture after we secure the system. Light years away, Captain Sarah Chen sat in the command chair of the UES Retribution, staring at the tactical display that showed the incoming Zephyrian fleet. The ship's bridge was dark except for the soft blue glow of the control panels. Around her, 37 men and women worked quietly at their stations, their faces lit by the displays that showed humanity's first glimpse of an alien invasion force. 200 ships, whispered Lieutenant Torres from the sensor station. "Captain, how are we supposed to fight 200 ships?" Chen was 38 years old, a career naval officer who had volunteered for the most dangerous assignment in human history. She had been chosen to command humanity's first and only experimental warship, not because she was the most senior officer, but because she had a reputation for doing impossible things. During the Mars Rebellion, she had captured 3 pirate vessels with a single mining ship. In the asteroid belt, she had held off a rogue AI fleet for 6 hours with nothing but a maintenance crew and some mining charges. "We fight smart," she said simply. The Retribution was humanity's greatest secret. For 15 years, scientists and engineers had worked in hidden facilities, reverse engineering technology from crashed alien scouts and building something the universe had never seen before. From the outside, the ship looked like an oversized human cruiser. The aliens would scan it and see standard fusion reactors, chemical thrusters, and kinetic weapons. They would be wrong about everything. Hidden beneath layers of conventional technology were systems that shouldn't have existed. Quantum processors that could calculate firing solutions faster than thought. Gravitational pulse cannons that could tear apart matter at the molecular level. Torpedo launchers that fired projectiles through folded space, bypassing energy shields entirely. And most importantly, an experimental AI core that had learned to think like a human. "Captain," called Chief Engineer Rodriguez from his station, "all experimental systems are green. The quantum cores are stable, and the gravitic manipulators are charging normally." Chen nodded. The Retribution had never been tested in real combat. Everything they knew about its capabilities came from computer simulations and carefully controlled test firings in empty space. They were about to bet the survival of their species on technology that might fail catastrophically the moment they tried to use it. "Communications? Any word from Earth Command?" "No, ma'am. Radio silence as ordered. As far as the aliens know, we're just another research vessel." That was the plan. Earth's conventional military would stay hidden until the aliens committed to their attack pattern. The Retribution would be ignored, dismissed as a non-threat, and then would strike when the aliens least expected it. It was a desperate plan, but it was the only chance humanity had. Chen had studied every piece of intelligence they had gathered about the Zephyrian Empire. Their tactics were efficient and predictable. They would enter a system, demand surrender, and then systematically destroy any military resistance. After that, they would occupy the major population centers and integrate the surviving population into their empire as a slave species. The pattern had worked for 3,000 years, against hundreds of different species, but none of those species had been human. "Captain," Torres called out, "I'm detecting hyperspace distortions. They're coming out of FTL." On the main display, space began to shimmer and twist. Points of light appeared, growing brighter and larger as the alien ships translated back into normal space. Chen watched as the tactical display populated with red icons, each one representing a vessel that could probably destroy the Retribution in a fair fight. The Zephyrian fleet arranged itself in perfect formation, their ships moving with mechanical precision. The largest vessels, massive dreadnoughts bristling with weapon systems, took position at the center. Smaller cruisers and destroyers spread out in supporting formations. Everything was orderly, efficient, and exactly what Chen had expected. "They're broadcasting," the communications officer reported. "Let's hear it." The bridge speakers crackled with an alien voice speaking accented English. "Primitive inhabitants of the third planet, you will surrender immediately and prepare for Imperial occupation. Resistance is futile. You have one of your time periods called hours to respond." Chen smiled grimly. Everything was going according to plan. The aliens were following their standard procedure, which meant they would spend the next hour scanning the system and preparing their attack formations. That gave her time to position the Retribution exactly where she needed it to be. "Helm, take us into the shadow of Luna. Keep our profile minimal and power systems at minimum emission." As the Retribution moved quietly through space, Chen studied the alien formation one more time. 200 ships against one. The entire galaxy would call it suicide. They didn't understand humans very well. Admiral Vextar watched the primitive system through his flagship sensors. The third planet was a blue-green world covered in water and clouds, orbited by a single large moon. Several space stations drifted in orbit around both the planet and its moon, along with hundreds of small civilian vessels. The inhabitants had built a surprisingly busy space infrastructure for such a young species. "Scan complete, Admiral," his sensor officer reported. 17 orbital installations, including what appears to be a shipyard. 347 civilian vessels of various sizes. Military presence is minimal. Define minimal. 2 patrol craft near the primary space station. Both appear to be armed with kinetic weapons only. There is also the unknown vessel we detected earlier, still hiding behind the moon. Vextar's tail twitched with impatience. The humans had 1 hour to respond, but he expected them to surrender within minutes once they saw the size of his fleet. Every species did. The sight of 200 Imperial warships was usually enough to convince any reasonable civilization that resistance was pointless. On Earth, President Martinez stood in the Situation Room deep beneath the North American Defense Complex, surrounded by military leaders and scientists. The room's main display showed the alien fleet hanging in space like a swarm of deadly insects. "Options?" Martinez asked quietly. General Hassan, chairman of the Joint Chiefs, shook his head. "Conventional forces are useless. Our biggest ships mount railguns and missile systems. Their smallest destroyer has energy shields and plasma weapons. It would be a slaughter." "What about Captain Chen?" Dr. Emily Watson, the Retribution Project's chief scientist, looked up from her tablet. "The ship is performing within normal parameters. All experimental systems are green. But, Mr. President, we're asking one vessel to do what should be impossible." Martinez nodded grimly. He had authorized the Retribution Project knowing this day might come. 15 years of humanity's best technology, trillions of dollars, and the lives of everyone on Earth now depended on 38 people in an untested ship. "Send our response," he ordered. Captain Chen received Earth's transmission and nodded to her communications officer. "Broadcast on all frequencies." The message that went out to the Zephyrian fleet was simple and in 17 different languages, including the Empire's own tongue. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earthship Retribution, speaking for the people of Earth. We welcome you to our system and hope we can establish peaceful relations. We request a meeting to discuss terms that would be acceptable to both our peoples." Admiral Vexitar heard the transmission, and his mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. "They wish to negotiate terms?" "It appears so, Admiral. The transmission originated from the unknown vessel behind their moon. Scan that ship again. Full spectrum analysis. His sensor officer worked for several minutes before reporting. Admiral, the vessel appears to be a primitive warship of some kind. It masses approximately 100,000 tons and shows signs of fusion reactors and magnetic acceleration systems. Its hull configuration suggests it carries kinetic weapons, possibly railguns or mass drivers. Vextar's amusement grew. The humans had sent their most powerful warship to negotiate. It was smaller than his flagship's shuttle bay, and armed with weapons that would barely scratch Imperial armor. Standard response, he ordered. The reply came within minutes, broadcast in perfect English. Human vessel, you will power down your systems and prepare to be boarded. Any attempt to flee will result in your immediate destruction. Your planet has 1 hour to surrender all military forces and prepare for occupation. Chen listened to the ultimatum and felt her jaw clench. She had hoped the aliens might be reasonable, but she had prepared for this response. Around the bridge, her crew waited for orders, their faces tense but determined. They're moving, Torres reported. The fleet is advancing toward Earth. Estimated time to orbital bombardment range is 57 minutes. Chen watched the tactical display as 200 alien ships began their approach. They moved in perfect formation, their larger vessels protected by screens of smaller ships. It was textbook Imperial tactics, designed to overwhelm any resistance through sheer firepower and coordination. Captain, called Lieutenant Morrison from the weapons station, should we power up our systems? Not yet. Let them get closer. Admiral Vextar studied the approaching planet with satisfaction. The humans had not responded to his ultimatum, which meant they were choosing to resist. It would make the conquest more interesting, though the outcome was never in doubt. Admiral, his tactical officer announced, we are detecting increased activity around the planet. Several of their orbital stations are powering up what appear to be defensive systems. Weapons? Kinetic batteries, Admiral. Mass drivers and missile launchers. Primitive but potentially dangerous to unshielded vessels. Vextar's inner eyelids flicked dismissively. Begin bombardment of all military installations. Full power. I want those stations reduced to debris within minutes. The Eternal Glory's main gun swiveled toward the largest space station, a massive structure that served as Earth's primary orbital shipyard. Plasma bolts, each one containing enough energy to power a city, lanced across space at the speed of light. The station's shields, powered by fusion reactors and reinforced with the best technology humanity possessed, lasted exactly 4 seconds. The plasma punched through the barriers like they were made of paper and struck the station's hull. Metal vaporized, atmosphere vented into space, and 10,000 people died in the first few seconds of humanity's first interstellar war. More plasma bolts followed, striking other stations and orbital platforms. A cargo depot exploded in a ball of superheated gas. A communications relay simply vanished, reduced to its component atoms. A passenger liner trying to flee toward Mars was caught by a destroyer's weapons and torn apart, its hull splitting along stress lines as its contents spilled into the vacuum. Chen watched the massacre on her tactical display, her hands gripping the arms of her command chair so tightly her knuckles were white. Thousands of people were dying and she was powerless to stop it. Captain, Torres whispered, Orbital Station 7 just went dark. That's where my sister works. I know, Chen said quietly. She knew the crew assignments of every orbital facility. She had memorized them before the mission began, understanding that she might have to watch friends and family die while she waited for the right moment to act. The alien fleet continued its advance, systematically destroying anything that might pose even a theoretical threat. Mining platforms, scientific research stations, even a small orbital hotel filled with tourists. The aliens were being thorough, eliminating every human presence in space before moving on to the planet itself. 43 minutes to Earth bombardment range, Torres reported, his voice hollow. Chen forced herself to remain calm. The plan called for her to wait until the alien fleet committed to their final attack formation. Only then would the retribution reveal itself and strike. But watching her people die while she did nothing was the hardest thing she had ever done. Captain, Morrison called out, Earth Command is requesting permission to launch our conventional forces. Negative. They stay grounded until my order. She couldn't let Earth's few dozen fighters and patrol craft sacrifice themselves uselessly. When the time came, every human life would have to count for something. Admiral Vextar observed the destruction of human orbital infrastructure with professional satisfaction. The bombardment had been efficient and thorough. In 30 minutes, his fleet had eliminated every significant human military asset in the system. "Sir," his sensor officer reported, "the unknown human vessel has not moved from its position behind the moon." "Cowards," Vextar clicked. "They are hiding while their people die." He had seen it before. When faced with overwhelming force, some species simply froze, unable to act. The human ship was probably full of terrified primitives who had given up before the battle began. It was time to finish this conquest and add another world to the Empire. The Zephyrian fleet reached Earth's orbital defense perimeter 38 minutes after the massacre began. Admiral Vexitar stood on his bridge, watching the blue planet grow larger on his displays. Soon, his ships would begin the systematic bombardment of the surface, targeting military installations and major population centers. Another world would fall to the Empire. "Admiral," his sensor officer called out, "the human vessel is moving." Vextar turned to look at the tactical display. The unknown ship had finally emerged from behind the moon and was accelerating toward his fleet. Its fusion drive glowed bright blue against the darkness of space. "One ship?" Vextar's mandibles clicked in amusement. "Are they insane?" His tactical officer studied the readings. "It appears to be conducting a suicide run, Admiral. Current course will bring it into weapons range in 12 minutes. Let it come. Order the destroyers in Formation 3 to eliminate it when it enters plasma range. Make it quick." Captain Chen sat in her command chair, watching the distance close between the Retribution and the alien fleet. Around her, the bridge crew worked with calm efficiency, preparing systems that had never been tested in combat. "Range to enemy fleet? 2 million kilometers and closing," Torres reported. "All hands. This is the captain," Chen announced over the ship's intercom. "In 10 minutes we will engage the enemy. Remember your training. Remember what we're fighting for. And remember that today humanity shows the galaxy what we're made of." She switched to a private channel. "Rodriguez, how are our experimental systems?" "All green, Captain. The quantum processors are running perfectly, and the gravitic manipulators are charged to full capacity. The AI core is analyzing enemy ship configurations and updating targeting solutions every microsecond." Chen nodded. The Retribution's AI was not truly intelligent in the way humans understood the term, but it could process information faster than any biological mind. More importantly, it had been programmed by humans, which meant it could think in ways that no alien computer could predict. "Torres, what's our sensor picture of the enemy formation?" "They're maintaining standard Imperial attack patterns, Captain. Main battle line consisting of dreadnoughts and battle cruisers, with destroyer screens forward and cruiser squadrons on the flanks. Very predictable." "Good. Predictable is exactly what we need." Admiral Vextar watched the human ship approach with growing curiosity. Its acceleration curve was unusual for a fusion-powered vessel. Either its engines were more efficient than expected, or it was lighter than his sensors indicated. "Admiral," his weapons officer reported, "the human vessel will enter effective plasma range in 4 minutes. Destroyer Formation 3 is ready to engage. Fire when ready." The 6 destroyers of Formation 3 turned their weapons toward the approaching human ship, their plasma cannons, each one capable of melting through a kilometer of solid steel, charged to full power and fired in perfect synchronization. 18 bolts of superheated plasma streaked across space toward the Retribution at light speed. On the human ship's bridge, alarms screamed as the incoming fire was detected. "Plasma bolts incoming," Torres shouted. "Impact in 3 seconds. Evasive maneuvers," Chen ordered calmly. What happened next should have been impossible. The Retribution twisted through space with an agility that defied its size, its hull dancing between the plasma bolts like a fighter plane dodging bullets. The gravitic manipulators built into its hull allowed it to change direction, without the crushing acceleration forces that would normally be required. All 18 plasma bolts missed. Admiral Vextar stared at his display in disbelief. How did they do that? Unknown, Admiral. Their ship moved in ways that should not be possible, given their apparent mass and thrust configuration. Fire again. Full barrage this time. This time, 36 plasma bolts converged on the human ship from multiple angles. There was no way the primitive vessel could dodge them all. The Retribution didn't try to dodge. Instead, it did something that no Zephyrian ship had ever seen before. Its hull began to shimmer with a strange energy field, and the plasma bolt struck what appeared to be empty space meters away from the ship's actual position. "Impossible," Vextar whispered. They have deflector shields? The truth was more complex. The Retribution's quantum field generators could bend space around the ship, creating pockets of distorted space-time that deflected energy weapons. It was technology that the Empire's physicists had declared theoretically impossible. Captain Chen smiled as the alien weapons fire harmlessly dispersed around her ship. Their turn to be surprised. Morrison, bring all weapon systems online. Aye, Captain. Quantum torpedo tubes loaded and ready. Gravitic pulse cannons charging. The Retribution's true nature began to reveal itself. Weapon ports that had been hidden beneath false hull plating suddenly opened. The ship's fusion signature changed as its real power systems came online. What had appeared to be a crude human warship transformed into something the galaxy had never seen before. Torres, target the lead destroyer. Fire quantum torpedoes full spread. 6 torpedoes launched from the Retribution, but they didn't travel through normal space. Instead, they folded space-time around themselves, appearing inside the target destroyer's hull without crossing the intervening distance. The alien ship's shields were useless against weapons that bypassed them entirely. The destroyer exploded from within, its hull tearing apart as the quantum torpedoes detonated simultaneously in its engine room, bridge, and weapons batteries. Debris scattered across space as secondary explosions consumed what remained of the vessel. Admiral Vextar watched one of his destroyers die in a way he had never seen before. The human weapons had simply appeared inside his ship's hull. No energy beam, no projectile, no visible attack at all. How is this possible? He demanded. Admiral, I'm reading massive energy signatures from the human vessel. Their true capabilities appear to be far beyond what we initially detected. All ships, concentrate fire on that human vessel. Destroy it immediately. 199 Zephyrian warships turned their weapons toward the Retribution. The space around Captain Chen's ship filled with plasma bolts, particle beams, and fusion missiles. Enough firepower to crack a planet's crust converged on a single target. The Retribution danced through the storm of destruction, its gravitic systems allowing impossible maneuvers while its quantum shields deflected or absorbed the incoming fire. But Chen knew she couldn't simply dodge forever. It was time to show the aliens what human tactical thinking could accomplish. All weapons fire at will, target their formation leaders, and disrupt their coordination. The Retribution's gravitic pulse cannons fired for the first time in anger. The weapons didn't shoot projectiles or energy beams. Instead, they fired focused gravitational waves that could tear apart matter at the molecular level. When the invisible pulses struck their targets, the alien ship simply came apart, their hulls disintegrating as the fundamental forces holding their atoms together were disrupted. 3 more destroyers died in the first salvo, then a cruiser, then one of the smaller battleships. But Chen's real weapon wasn't her ship's advanced technology. It was her human ability to think in ways that no alien mind could predict. As the Zephyrian fleet tried to adjust their formation to deal with her attack, she was already moving to exploit weaknesses they didn't know they had. Helm, take us through their formation. Full speed. The Retribution accelerated directly toward the center of the alien fleet, its quantum shields flaring as it absorbed massive amounts of incoming fire. To Admiral Vextar, it looked like a suicide run. The human captain had finally snapped under pressure and was throwing her ship away in a desperate attack. He was wrong again. Chen wasn't running toward the alien ships to ram them. She was using their own formation against them. As the Retribution passed through the center of the Zephyrian battle line, the alien ships found themselves unable to fire without hitting their own vessels. Their perfect formation, designed for maximum firepower projection, became a trap when an enemy moved through the middle of it. Chen used those precious seconds to target the fleet's command ships, her quantum torpedoes appearing inside their hulls and detonating simultaneously. In the span of 30 seconds, she eliminated 5 cruisers and 2 battleships, along with most of the fleet's senior officers. The Zephyrian formation began to collapse as ship commanders tried to maintain their positions while avoiding friendly fire. What had been a perfectly coordinated fleet became a confused mass of vessels, each captain trying to get a clear shot at the human ship that was dancing through their ranks like a ghost. Admiral Vextar realized, with growing horror, that his empire's tactics were useless against an enemy that refused to follow the rules of civilized warfare. The humans weren't fighting like any species he had ever encountered. They were unpredictable, chaotic, and terrifyingly effective. For the first time in 3,000 years, a Zephyrian fleet was losing a battle. The battle had been raging for 2 hours. and space around Earth was filled with the burning wreckage of Zephyrian warships. Captain Chen stood on the bridge of the Retribution, her uniform torn and stained with sweat, watching the tactical display show impossible numbers. Her single ship had destroyed 43 alien vessels, but 157 still remained. Hull integrity at 60%, Chief Engineer Rodriguez reported over the intercom. The quantum shields are holding, but the gravitic manipulators are overheating. We're pushing the systems beyond their design limits, Chen nodded grimly. The Retribution was fighting a battle it was never designed to win. Every system on the ship was operating in the red zone, held together by human engineering and sheer determination. But they were still alive, and the alien fleet was learning to fear them. Admiral Vextar stood in the wreckage of his flagship's bridge, his blue scales now dark with his own blood. The Eternal Glory had taken a direct hit from the human ship's gravitic weapons, and half his bridge crew was dead. Around him, damage control teams worked frantically to keep the ship operational. "Status report," he ordered, his voice weak but steady. "Admiral, we have lost 43 vessels. The human ship continues to evade our weapons and strike at will. Our formation has completely collapsed." Vextar's mandibles clicked with frustration. 3,000 years of military tradition were being destroyed by a single enemy vessel that refused to follow the basic rules of space combat. The humans didn't fight in formation. They didn't maintain proper spacing. They didn't even try to protect their ship from damage. Instead, they used tactics that were completely unpredictable. "Sir," his tactical officer continued, "several of our captains are requesting permission to withdraw and regroup." "Denied." Vextar's voice was cold. "No Imperial fleet has ever retreated from a single enemy vessel. We will destroy them or die trying." Captain Chen watched the alien fleet attempt to reorganize itself around her ship. The surviving vessels were trying to form a sphere with her at the center, boxing her in with overlapping fields of fire. It was a good tactic, one that should have worked against any conventional opponent. Chen wasn't conventional. "Torres, what's the status of that large asteroid cluster we passed on the way in?" "About 2 million kilometers spinward, Captain. Why?" Chen smiled, and several of her bridge crew felt a chill. They had learned to recognize that particular expression. It meant their captain was about to do something that would either be brilliant or get them all killed. "Helm, plot a course for the asteroid field. Maximum acceleration." "Captain," Morrison called from the weapon station, "if we go there, we'll be trapped. The asteroids will limit our maneuverability." "That's exactly what I'm counting on." The Retribution broke away from the alien fleet and accelerated toward the asteroid field, its fusion drive glowing white-hot as it pushed toward maximum velocity. Behind them, the Zephyrian ships gave chase, their formation reorganizing into a pursuit pattern. Admiral Vextar watched the human ship flee toward the asteroids and allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. "Finally, they're running. All ships pursue and destroy. Don't let them escape into the asteroid field." His fleet accelerated in pursuit, their ships strung out in a long line as they raced to catch the fleeing human vessel. It was exactly what Vextar had hoped for. Once the human ship was trapped among the asteroids, his superior numbers would finally count for something. The Retribution reached the asteroid field first, diving deep into the maze of tumbling rocks and ice. The largest asteroids were kilometers across, while smaller ones filled the spaces between them like a three-dimensional minefield. Navigation required split-second timing and precise maneuvering. For a human ship with gravitic manipulators and quantum processing cores, it was challenging but manageable. For Zephyrian vessels designed for open space combat, it was a nightmare. The first alien ship to enter the field, an overeager destroyer, struck a 2-kilometer asteroid at nearly 10% of light speed. The impact vaporized both the asteroid and the ship in a brief flash of superheated plasma. The explosion sent debris flying in all directions, striking other pursuing vessels and forcing them to slow down or risk similar collisions. Chen watched the disaster unfold on her rear displays. "Perfect. They're bunching up at the field's edge, afraid to follow us in. Morrison, prepare the gravitic mines." "Gravitic mines, Captain? We're going to collapse some of these asteroids into artificial gravity wells. Let physics do the work for us." It was insane, dangerous, and completely unprecedented. Chen was proposing to weaponize the asteroid field itself, turning chunks of rock into gravitational weapons that would pull the alien ships off course and into devastating collisions. The Retribution moved through the field, its gravitic pulse cannons firing not at enemy ships but at the largest asteroids. Each pulse collapsed matter at the molecular level, creating dense gravitational anomalies that began pulling nearby objects toward them. Smaller asteroids spiraled inward, gaining speed as they fell into the artificial gravity wells. The Zephyrian fleet finally entered the field in force, their ships moving carefully through the maze of rock and ice. They had formed a search pattern, trying to corner the human vessel in a dead-end canyon between two massive asteroids. They flew directly into Chen's trap. The artificial gravity wells activated simultaneously, their pull dragging asteroids, ice chunks, and alien ships toward multiple collision points. The Zephyrian vessels, designed for the predictable conditions of open space, found themselves fighting not just the human ship but the laws of physics themselves. A cruiser tried to escape one gravity well, only to be caught by another, its hull crushed as competing gravitational forces tore it apart. A battleship managed to break free but collided with an asteroid that had been pulled out of its normal orbit. 3 destroyers found themselves trapped in a spiral, unable to escape the gravitational anomaly that was drawing them toward their destruction. Captain Chen guided the Retribution through the chaos she had created, her ship's advanced systems allowing her to navigate the gravitational maze that was destroying the alien fleet. She struck at targets of opportunity, her quantum torpedoes appearing inside enemy hulls while their crews were distracted by the gravitational anomalies. "Captain," Torres reported, "enemy fleet strength is down to 112 vessels. But we've got problems. The gravitic mines are starting to destabilize. If they collapse completely, they could create a black hole." Chen felt a cold chill. She had been so focused on destroying the alien fleet that she hadn't considered the long-term consequences of her gravitational weapons. If the artificial gravity wells collapsed into singularities, they would consume everything in the asteroid field, including her ship. "Rodriguez, can we reverse the gravitic collapse?" "Maybe, Captain. But we'd have to stop fighting and focus all our power on the containment systems." Chen looked at the tactical display. Half the alien fleet was still operational, and they were finally adapting to the gravitational anomalies. Some of their captains were skilled enough to use the gravity wells to their advantage, slingshotting around them to gain speed and maneuverability. She made her decision. "Negative. We finish this fight first, then worry about the black holes." It was a typically human response. Most species would have chosen caution over aggression, survival over victory. Chen chose to trust that she could solve the gravitational problem after she had eliminated the immediate threat of the alien fleet. The battle in the asteroid field continued for another hour, with the Retribution dancing between gravity wells and chunks of rock, while the surviving Zephyrian ships tried desperately to corner their elusive prey. Chen used every trick she could think of, from ramming damaged asteroids into enemy vessels to hiding behind gravitational lenses that bent her ship's sensor signature. Slowly, inevitably, the alien fleet continued to shrink. 100 ships became 90. 90 became 70. Each destroyed vessel made the odds a little better, but Chen knew her ship couldn't keep fighting forever. The Retribution systems were failing one by one and her crew was exhausted. "Captain," Morrison called out, "we're down to our last quantum torpedoes. After this salvo, we'll be limited to gravitic weapons only." Chen nodded. The end was approaching one way or another. Either she would destroy the remaining alien ships or they would finally manage to corner and kill her. There was no middle ground. All weapons target the enemy flagship. "I want Admiral Vextar to know that Earth remembers every person he killed today." The Retribution's final torpedo spread, launched toward the eternal glory, the quantum weapons folding space around themselves as they crossed the impossible distance between predator and prey. Admiral Vextar had just enough time to see death approaching before his flagship exploded around him. But even as his ship died, the Admiral managed to send one final transmission to the few dozen vessels that remained of his once mighty fleet. His last words would echo through the galaxy and change the course of galactic history. "Do not underestimate the humans. They are not like us. They are not like anyone." The sun was rising over Earth's eastern hemisphere when the last Zephyrian warship finally died. Captain Chen sat in her command chair, staring at a tactical display that showed nothing but debris and the slowly stabilizing gravitational anomalies she had created. The asteroid field was quiet now, filled only with the twisted wreckage of 200 alien vessels and the fading energy signatures of collapsed gravity wells. "All stop," she ordered. Quietly, the Retribution's engines shut down, for the first time in 8 hours, leaving the ship drifting silently through the wreckage of the most powerful fleet in known space. Around the bridge, her crew sat in stunned silence, hardly believing they were still alive. "Damage report," Chen said. Chief Engineer Rodriguez's voice came through the intercom, hoarse with exhaustion. "Captain, I don't know how we're still in one piece. Hull integrity is down to 30%. The quantum field generators are completely burned out. The gravitic manipulators are offline, and we're running on emergency power only." Chen nodded. The Retribution had given everything it had and more. The ship was barely holding together, held in one piece by emergency force fields and the determination of its crew. But they had won. "Torres, any sign of surviving enemy vessels?" "Negative, Captain. I'm reading some escape pods scattered throughout the field, but no active warships." "We got them all." Lieutenant Morrison looked up from his weapons console, his face pale with shock. "Captain, did we really just destroy an entire Imperial fleet, just us?" Before Chen could answer, the communications console came alive with transmissions from Earth. Every radio frequency was filled with voices calling out to the Retribution, from military commanders to news reporters to ordinary civilians who had watched the battle on their screens. "UES Retribution, this is Earth Command. Please respond." Chen activated the channel. "Earth Command, this is Captain Chen. The Zephyrian fleet has been completely destroyed. Earth is safe." There was a long pause before the reply came, and Chen could hear the emotion in General Hassan's voice. "Confirmed, Retribution. We're reading no active enemy vessels in the system." "Captain Chen, on behalf of the people of Earth, thank you." Chen closed the channel and looked around her bridge. Her crew was exhausted, battered, and still processing what they had accomplished. In 8 hours of continuous combat, 38 humans in an experimental warship had destroyed a fleet that had conquered worlds and enslaved entire species. "Captain," Torres said quietly, "we're receiving long-range communications. The battle is already being broadcast across the galaxy. Every species with faster-than-light communications is hearing about what happened here." Chen wasn't surprised. The Zephyrian Empire had been the dominant power in this region of space for 3,000 years. Their sudden destruction at the hands of an unknown species would send shockwaves throughout the galaxy. 3 days later, the first alien visitors arrived at Earth. They came not as conquerors but as diplomats, representatives of species that had been fighting the Zephyrian Empire for centuries. The Catherian Republic, the Stellar Alliance, the Void-Touched Collective, all of them wanted to meet the humans who had done the impossible. Captain Chen found herself in the unexpected role of Earth's first interstellar diplomat. She met with the alien ambassadors in a conference room aboard the rebuilt orbital station above Earth, still wearing her uniform and still exhausted from the battle that had changed everything. "Captain Chen," said Ambassador Kelthar of the Catherian Republic, his crystalline features reflecting the light from Earth below, "my people have been fighting the Zephyrians for 800 years. We lost entire star systems to their fleets. How did you destroy them so completely with a single ship?" Chen considered her answer carefully. Around the table sat representatives of a dozen different species, all of them waiting to understand how humanity had achieved what they had thought impossible. "We didn't fight them the way they expected," she said finally. "The Zephyrian Empire was built on predictability. They had tactics that worked for 3,000 years because every species they fought used similar strategies. But humans don't think like other species. We're chaotic, unpredictable, and we refuse to follow rules that don't make sense to us." The alien ambassadors exchanged glances. Ambassador Kelthar leaned forward. "Captain, are you saying that your success was based on your species' tendency toward irrational behavior?" Chen smiled. "What you call irrational, we call creative problem-solving. The Zephyrians expected us to fight according to established military doctrine. Instead, we used their own tactics against them, turned physics into a weapon, and refused to accept that the battle was hopeless even when we were outnumbered 200 to 1. "But surely your technology played a role," insisted Ambassador Theklan of the Void-Touched Collective. "Your ship's capabilities were far beyond what we detected." "Our technology was important," Chen agreed, "but it was human technology, designed by human minds to solve problems in human ways. We didn't just build better weapons. We built weapons that no alien mind would think to create, powered by principles that most species consider too dangerous to explore." The meeting continued for hours. With the alien diplomats trying to understand how humanity had achieved such a decisive victory, some wanted to form military alliances. Others offered trade agreements. All of them recognized that the galaxy's balance of power had fundamentally changed. But Chen's mind was on the future. The destruction of the Zephyrian fleet had announced humanity's presence to the galaxy, and not everyone would be happy about it. The Empire had client species and vassals who might seek revenge. Other powers might view Earth as a threat that needed to be eliminated before it could grow stronger. "Captain," Ambassador Kelthar said as the meeting concluded, "what are your people's intentions now? Will you seek to build an empire of your own?" Chen looked out the conference room's viewport at Earth, hanging blue and peaceful in the darkness of space. "We're not conquerors," she said. "We're explorers, scientists, artists, and dreamers. But we're also survivors. And if anyone threatens the innocent people of any world, they'll find that the destruction of the Zephyrian fleet was just the beginning." The alien ambassadors left Earth with a clear understanding. Humanity was now a major power in the galaxy, and they would defend not only their own world, but any species that chose to align with them. The age of the Zephyrian Empire was over. The age of humanity had begun. 6 months later, Captain Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution 2, the first of a new class of human warships built with the lessons learned from that desperate night battle. Around her, a fleet of 50 human vessels prepared for their first interstellar patrol, protecting a convoy of colony ships bound for distant worlds. The galaxy was a dangerous place, filled with species that still believed in the old ways of conquest and empire, but it was also full of possibilities, new worlds to explore and new friends to make. And if anyone tried to threaten the growing alliance of free worlds that was forming around Earth, they would learn the same lesson that Admiral Vextar had discovered too late. Humans didn't fight fair. They fought to win. Chen looked out at the stars and smiled. The universe was about to discover just how dangerous that could be for those who chose to be humanity's enemies. The night of falling stars above Earth had been just the beginning. Now it was time to show the galaxy what humans could accomplish when they set their minds to it. The age of human expansion into the galaxy had begun, built on the foundation of one impossible victory, and the promise that no species would ever again face extinction alone. Earth had announced its presence to the universe in the most dramatic way possible, and the echoes of that announcement would be felt for generations to come. As the human fleet engaged its faster-than-light drives and disappeared into the cosmic darkness, observers throughout the galaxy noted the event in their records. A new power had emerged, one that fought with tactics no computer could predict and technology that defied conventional understanding. The galaxy would never be the same.